Welcome, everyone. This is our first global launch of our Area Pro sensor. We're all pretty excited to be here. So, to introduce myself, I am Siobhan Ryan and I'm your host today. I am the head of the Americas at XY Sense. And I suppose what that really means is I spend my days working with enterprise leaders across 20 plus countries, helping them use real-time data to make smarter decisions about their spaces, their sustainability goals, and how work actually happens. I've spent the past decade or so, not keeping track of the actual amount of years, working across prop tech, IoT, and workplace strategy. And I'm always been especially drawn to the intersection of people, technology, and places, and figuring out how workplaces can be both high performing and genuinely human. These days, I'm based in New York, but as you can probably hear, my accent isn't exactly straightforward. But I'm originally from Ireland, and I've also spent time working in Australia and the UK before heading stateside. So I generally bring a global perspective of how people experience work and the workplace. Today, we're also lucky to be joined by Alex Birch, our co-founder and CEO at XY Sense, with another accent. So Alex is joining us from Melbourne in Australia. Alex is one of the people behind the technology that's really helping workplace and property teams understand how their spaces are being used, all through 100% anonymous real-time occupancy data that connects into a whole ecosystem of workplace tools. Alex has been building in this space now for over 20 years. And before XY Sense, he co-founded CeraView, now known as Eptura, and led their APAC business, working closely with some of the world's largest organizations on their workspace and real estate strategies. At heart, Alex is an engineer and definitely a problem solver, and he's especially passionate about how data can reshape office utilization and create better workplace experiences. So, welcome, Alex.
Thanks, Siobhan. Super excited to be here for this launch.
Awesome. And it is quite late for you there in Australia.
It is, yeah,
Awesome.
it's just ticked over midnight, but that's all good. I'm still here.
You're a day ahead of us. You're in April now, so April
Yeah,
Fool's Day.
yeah. April Fools for me, but not April Fools for the rest of the audience, likely.
Yeah. And not for this launch, that's for sure. There's no jokes here.
Exactly.
Okay, awesome. Let's jump into what we've actually got lined up for today. So, first things off, we're going to kick off with a bit of an intro to Area Pro. So this is XY Sense's latest sensor offering, if you haven't heard. And honestly, it's been about 3 years in the making. So we're really excited to share this with you finally. And there's a lot of new things to come with just new hardware. From there, we're going to zoom out a little and look at how leading workplace teams are actually using occupancy data, especially when it comes to driving things like automation, and then really what is measurable ROI when it comes to implementing these types of technologies. Then we're going to get a little bit more practical and we'll talk through what you should be thinking about when it comes to choosing the right types of technology for your spaces, whether that's different space types, scaling deployments globally, or just making sure that you're set up for the long term. As usual, we will have some Q&A. Feel free to add any questions you have as they come up through the session. There is a little Q&A pop up that you can ask your questions in there, and we'll get to some of those at the end. So that's the plan for today. So let's jump right in. So Alex, we're globally about to launch and unveil our Area Pro. But I think it's good to take a step back of kind of how we got here and what's making Area Pro so special. So I think the best way to start is actually taking us back to how we got here and where we all started.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the story of XY really helps underpin the Area Pro, where we're coming from, and why it is how it is. And that story starts in 2016, where after co-founding workplace software CeraView, as Siobhan mentioned, my co-founder and I, Luke, and set out on a journey to improve how the built environment delivers for people. What we aim to do was to make it more operationally efficient and minimize friction for people using that space. So globally, buildings are never that well utilized, and yet they're the second or third biggest expense for most organizations. Some pay north of $1 billion a year on leases and running costs, and yet their offices are often less than 50% utilized. $500 million or more spent on empty offices every year. Also, consider that offices are heated, cooled, powered, cleaned, and run typically 5 days a week. And yet, globally, we see that for less than half the week, they're busy. If you just think about that globally, that's an incredible amount of unnecessary energy spent to keep the buildings running. So, back in 2016, we started XY with a few fundamental guiding tenets. The first one, the information we collected had to be trusted. To be trusted, that meant it had to be accurate and in real time. And by real time, we mean no matter how big your building or floor is, you could see the data instantly. This helps in building trust in the decisions you're making. Second one is it had to be privacy first and 100% anonymous. So much so that we put it into our name. Nothing leaves the sensor except anonymous XY coordinates. From the factory floor to installation on site through to the sensor's end of life. Third one is we had to be scalable so that we could deliver return on investment for large-scale multi-building rollouts. And that meant affordable installations with as fewer sensors as possible. With this vision, we took funding from Blackbird Ventures and set about delivering the answer to these problems. So back then in 2016, all the way through to 2019, we were in research and development phase. We actually had experts tell us that what we wanted to deliver was not possible. One actually said that we'd melt the chip and you could cook your breakfast on it. But despite this, in 2019, we launched to market with our first sensor and saw great early traction in Australia. But back then, we were still maturing our production processes. Our sensors were designed in-house and assembled in our Cremorne, Melbourne office. And the plastic covers were actually 3D printed. And then we had a drill and we were sanding them and then hand painting them. So they truly were handcrafted computer vision sensor hardware.
I remember those days in Cremorne where we'd individually be helping pack and get this stuff out the door. We've definitely come a long way since then.
Absolutely. So you fast forward to now, we have teams in the UK, US, India, Australia, and Dubai. And we're installed in over 30 countries for over 70 of the biggest enterprises in the world. And our cloud platform processes around 225 billion data points a year. For example, we've helped a global pharmaceutical company with 85,000 people rethink their office design and globally change the ratio of desks to rooms and reduce the average meeting room size as well. Another example, take two buildings, two customers, two separate cities, London and Sydney, but between them, our sensors are automatically reclaiming over 1,700 meeting room bookings a month that otherwise would be sitting empty for the booking. And we do that all over the world, but that's quite phenomenal. 1,700 in these two separate buildings. As you know, Siobhan, as the market's maturing, so has the kind of problems that our customers are asking us to solve. They've really moved way beyond just office design and informing fit out. That's still a very big part of what we do, but really we've extended far beyond that. And today, our platform is being used for things like catering planning, security alerting, even identifying poor air quality, wayfinding, and more recently, we're seeing a shift globally towards integrating into the building operating system itself. What I mean by that is actually influencing airflow, liters per person, and even lighting.
I suppose that's probably like quite a big shift as well to go from insights to actually driving action. And I suppose I can't believe how much our customers are talking about really specific things like cafes and food areas. That comes up quite a lot as a friction point within workplaces. And now we're able to help solve for some of those. So I think like some of the use cases have really evolved. And in the last 3 years, we've actually, or 3 years ago, just like had to look at what does the next generation of our wide area sensor look like without losing what made it work in the first place. I think what's been great is we've really been able to stay anchored to our core principles of 100% anonymous, true precision accuracy, and real-time data that can scale across an entire, I think, as well, global portfolio. Because with the wide area coverage and ultimately affordability, but at the same time, we did know we had to push it further.
We sure did. We needed even greater coverage. Deployment costs, with global scale, the fewer sensors, the more affordable. We needed higher precision, especially in more complex environments where it's like low light or spaces with a lot of movement. And critically, we needed to build a platform that could support the next generation of AI-driven capabilities. So we set ourselves 3 years ago a pretty clear challenge. Could we dramatically improve coverage and scalability, build something that's truly AI ready, and lower the total cost of ownership? And at the same time, still maintaining that market leading standard for accuracy and privacy.
And I suppose drum roll moment. And did we get there, Alex?
We sure did. I'd love to see some emojis if you can do that in this Zoom webinar. We're really proud to share, after a lot of work for the last 3 years, the result with the world, our brand new Area Pro. So our first sensor that we actually launched in 2019, even back then, had the largest coverage range in the market. So that's 1,000 square feet or 95 square meters. And in fact, we saw our competitors try to catch up. But to this day, to our knowledge, nobody could match our coverage at ceiling heights as low as 2.4 meters or roughly 8 feet. Today, our new Area Pro actually smashes that limitation out of the park. We support now up to 30 feet or 9-meter radius from the sensor and 3,000 square feet or 280 square meter coverage area. And that's at an increased install height range from 2.4 meters to 5 meters, which is 7'10" to 16'4". And we actually have deployments today where we're seeing that increased coverage range and the benefit. So we have a live deployment we're looking at here where we see 80 desks covered at standard ceiling height with 2 sensors. This truly unlocks scale. But to add to that, our sensor can actually see up to 255 people concurrently. That's almost nightclub level crowds. And if you contrast that with others in the market, they actually limit the detections in terms of regions of interest, potentially up to 9 people measured per sensor at once, versus for us, unlimited regions of interest, 255 people concurrently, no matter where they are in the sensor range. So to deliver a sensor that works at higher heights and greater distances, we needed to enhance the way we position people. We needed to pinpoint people sitting at seats and breakout spaces from far further away. Not long ago, our sensors could locate a person within about 30 centimeters or 1 foot from a distance of 5 meters, 15 feet. Now we can pinpoint someone to within inches, so 10 centimeters from 9 meters away. That's 30 feet. So that's 3 times the precision from almost twice the distance. We achieve this in a few ways. One is that we can now individually calibrate each sensor that we manufacture. So we do this we had to design significant manufacturing elements to be able to enable this because each single sensor gets calibrated. We can do that with up to 750,000 sensors a year now. In order to deliver all this, we had to go back to the foundations. It wasn't a small upgrade. We actually rebuilt the core of the device from the ground up, starting with a completely new board and a significantly more powerful on-device neural processing unit, or NPU, to keep up with the enhanced coverage range. Our new edge processor can actually have performance of we've gone from half a frame a second all the way to 60 frames a second now, which is over 100 times faster than the previous gen. And the real impact of that is we're now doing all of that AI processing directly on the device instantly. We're not sending data off to the cloud and waiting minutes for it to come back. And we're definitely not operating on delayed intervals like some other solutions out there that are battery powered. It's happening in real time on the edge. And that's what really opens up a whole new raft of possibilities for how buildings can respond and adapt in the moment. One meaningful outcome, excuse me. One meaningful outcome is that our Area Pro sensor works far better in low light. We actually have performance at 5 lux. And most building emergency lighting systems operate at 15 to 20 lux. Our sensor's accuracy is also far above those traditional motion detection lights, or PIR. I'm sure everyone here is familiar with waving their hands to turn the lights back on after hours. So we're working on integration straight into building lighting systems so your teams will never have to wave their arms about again. With that extra compute, we're able to deliver a raft of new features alongside our core. One that I'm super excited about is human behavioral analytics. This is all while remaining anonymous. Out of the box, we support sit-stand detection, and this helps us understand human well-being. It's actually not healthy to sit all day, nor to stand all day. It's actually about the transition. This technology also helps real estate leaders plan how many sit-stand desks are actually needed. This is our first human behavior, but we plan to expand this to include other human behaviors that can inform the workplace. One such one is, am I on the phone? Or am I interacting with others? Or am I using a computer? And all of those, while remaining anonymous, really help deliver a deeper understanding of how the built environment is being used and reduces the friction for the people in it. The next feature I'm super excited about, we are delivering 100% anonymous dwell this year. So we're adding dwell support to our SIS sensor, and that enables us to understand how long people have been waiting, how long they've been waiting for the lift, how long they've been waiting to be served food at the cafe, the concierge, the front desk, or so many other possibilities. We're doing all of that again in real time. And if you combine that with our alerting platform, we can unlock use cases around real-time queue provisioning and many other ways to improve workplace experience. Furthermore, our dwell functionality is really, really advanced. We've actually been working on it for many years. And one unique feature is that it allows people to move in and out of range of view while we still maintain a consistent anonymous dwell time for them. So imagine going outside and coming back into the building and rejoining your queue position. To us, that's truly unique. Dwell unlocks another feature, so paths of travel. So being able to understand the anonymous paths of movement throughout a space. So if you imagine in a large building, different teams interacting with each other, and some need to be co-located close, others need to be, others don't interact at all. Being able to understand in generic terms the flow of traffic throughout a building. That really unlocks a deeper understanding of actually what's going on in the workplace. All right, so you can see on the screen here what accuracy looks like for one of our live deployments. But I'd like to show you the Area Pro for real life. What does this level of real-time accuracy look like? So let's take a look right now. And while I say right now, it is now 20 past midnight. And I tried to convince our team in Australia to stick around in the office for the demo, but didn't quite get there. So earlier today, I did record a video of the office. So I'll hand over to the video and myself from earlier today.
Hi there, I'm here to demo our brand new Area Pro sensor live in our office. So I have one installed right above me at 2.4 meters or 7'10" height. And to start with, I want to show you the extended range. So you should see two dots right now, one for my camera woman and myself, and I'm going to walk backwards towards the end of the office. And as you can see from the view, I'm now standing approximately 10 or over 10 meters or 30 feet away from the sensor, even when it is at standard office heights.
On to the next video, demonstration of sit stand.
Another feature of the Area Pro we're super excited about is the human behaviours and its ability to be able to understand, still anonymously, what people are actually doing in the office. And the first thing that we're releasing out of the box is sit-stand capability. So in the live view right now here in our office, you can see a few of my colleagues with a magenta ring around their circle showing their live location and showing that they're sitting. You also see two blue rings for myself and my camera person to identify that we are standing. Now, if I walk to a seat behind me, which is 10 meters away from the sensor, you should see now that I have a magenta ring saying that I am seated.
Pretty cool, huh?
Wow, I think it's so impressive, Alex, seeing this in real time. And I think it's like not my first time seeing this, but even just going through the depth of what you've just presented of I think it shows just how proud we all are of actually seeing this in action. And again, trying to do these live demos, but encourage everyone to reach out to us all to see more in real time.
What I will say is we're constantly amazed at the coverage range and the accuracy of our sensor and how it delivers even in low ceiling heights. So it's one thing to talk about it, but when you see the data and what's actually happening in that space in real time, it just starts to make sense. And what we see is the lean forward moment for our customers. It's when they actually stand underneath the sensors and they see our accuracy. So instead of it sitting in a dashboard, it starts feeding into how the building runs. Things like sequences of operations, airflow, lighting. And that's really where the ROI lives.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like let's dig into that a little bit more, Alex, because I think that is the inevitable, like the step change for a lot of workplace and space management teams. So traditionally their roles have been pretty reactive. Something breaks, someone complains, they pull a report to maybe validate that if they have access to some of this data. But when the data is fast and accurate enough, it actually stops being just a reporting tool and becomes a lot more operational. And you can look at doing things like automate booking releases, like we've spoken to 1,700 bookings per month across two different cities and sites, which is just phenomenal when you think about the impact of that. We're also doing like triggering cleaning times for real time cleaning for facilities, picking up activity across access controlled area to start even optimizing lighting and HVAC as you've mentioned based on what's actually happening and not just on a schedule, which people are so used to.
Yeah, absolutely. The HVAC example is such a great one. Most buildings still run on static schedules, and space management teams don't always have the data to challenge that. But we've all experienced it. You go into the office after hours, the HVAC's shut off at 6. People arrive at 6:30, and within an hour, it's hot and stuffy. Nothing's changed. The building's just stopped responding. With occupancy-driven controls, you can actually show how running things dynamically reduces energy use and improves air quality for the people inside. And that is a very different conversation to have with leadership than a quarterly utilization report.
No, exactly. And definitely that employee experience in New York, I go to many events where it's an after hours event in an office space and it is always warm. So you have to dress appropriately. But I think what's great is actually seeing really what we're doing is unlocking another layer of value from this kind of technology.
Exactly. I mean, features on their own, they don't matter. What really matters is why the features are there and what's the outcome. And the real shift here is moving from reporting on what happened to enabling buildings to respond in real time. Because the data is fast enough and accurate enough, you can actually automate things reliably. Whether that's booking releases, cleaning workflows, security alerts, lighting controls, so no more waving your hands at 5:45, HVAC optimization, and energy reduction. That's the difference between measuring utilization and actually running a smarter building.
And I think also looking at like for decades, this step change, like strategy, space strategy in corporate real estate's been pretty linear. You'd forecast, design, build, and then lock that in for what could be a lot of years. And I think that's just really not working anymore, that people are expecting a lot of dynamic in the workplace. And the workplace needs to respond to exactly how people are working. And people are working remote, digital, and in person. And strategy needs to be shaped around this behavioral data, not just policy or gut feel or the loudest voice of what's coming through. So I think depending on if you're deciding how much space you actually need, how many meeting rooms, what type of meeting rooms, or if you're looking to cancel bookings for no shows, deploying cleaning or security based on real occupancy, or even making sure you're hitting things like recommended airflow per person for comfort and well-being. It all comes back to one thing of you need to be able to trust the occupancy signal to ensure that you are maximizing that ROI.
Yeah, absolutely. Because right at the intersection of your real estate strategy and your smart building strategy is the workplace experience that you deliver. It's how you design and run spaces that actually respond to how your teams work. Spaces that support productivity and ultimately earn that commute. And really, That's what everyone on this call is working towards.
Absolutely. And I think that's both the challenge and the opportunity. I think it's also elevated the role of workplace leaders in a way that doesn't always get recognized. So it isn't just about managed space anymore. It's really about shaping the conditions of how an organization is actually operating. And it is a big responsibility. And I think the teams that are actually doing it really well are making a real impact today. So I think let's take a step back and Alex, really addressing like what does Area Pro actually mean for the buyers and integrators looking at this kind of technology?
So in a nutshell, it means a few really important things. You have to have the data you can trust, you can do it at scale, and you can do it with fewer devices. And that translates to lower install costs, lower ongoing costs, and infrastructure that actually holds up over years and not months. For us, really, we think about it as a reset for the category. We're not just improving on what occupancy sensor can do, we're redefining what an enterprise-grade occupancy sensor should be. Maybe just to zoom out for a second on the why behind all of this. Every day, I look at buildings around the world, and the reality is they're really only full about 3 days out of 7. That's less than half the week. It used to be 5 out of 7, now it's 3 out of 7. But yet, the amount of energy and cost that goes into powering, heating, cooling, and cleaning these spaces, for me, it's almost unfathomable on a global scale. But at the same time, we see friction everywhere in the workplace. People struggling to find space, rooms sitting empty but booked, environments that just aren't responding to how people are actually working. And all of that points to the same thing. There's a massive opportunity if we can better understand how space is truly being used. We've come a long way already, but the scale of the challenge and the opportunity is just absolutely enormous. It's about shaping a built environment that's genuinely human-led and data-driven, one that adapts in real time and helps people to do their best work and is better for both the balance sheet and the planet. That's our mission, and that's what we're delivering with our Area Pro.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing that, Alex. And I think having worked closely with you and our greater product and engineering team for a number of years, I can say it is really a mission that is something that the team really does live and breathe every day. And I think it is, I'm incredibly proud of what we've achieved, and even showing this today at a global scale is phenomenal. So I think kudos to everyone at XY for this achievement, and some lovely acknowledgement as well coming through on the chats. So let's take a step back and get some questions from the online team. So give me a second while I pull this up.
While you're doing that, Sean, I just might echo thanks to our customer base, to the market, but also to our team. Our team have put in a phenomenal effort over the last few years to be able to deliver this. We constantly hear that we punch above our weight, and I think the team have just done an awesome job, not just accepting the status quo and delivering more and delivering above and beyond. So big thanks to the team who are listening.
Awesome. So we have a question here. So how does accuracy change at maximum range? And what new parameters are you now able to calibrate? Can you give us a little word on how the commissioning process might look? Has it changed?
So the commissioning process is almost the same. What's changed is the accuracy of the sensor, even at further out, is still at high precision. And as I mentioned, we're doing that because we individually calibrate each sensor. So we do that in the factory, and that enables us to unlock this accuracy. So we're seeing it is line of sight, but at 30 feet away, still the ability to position people within 1 foot. And you saw as I walked away, we're able to accurately, in that video, sit down at the seat. So that's whether you're sitting or standing. That's at different ceiling heights, all the way from 2.4 meters to 5 meters. So in the feet speak, roughly 7 to, I think I said 34 feet. And the accuracy of the sensor, as it gets higher, it still retains its accuracy. It can, of course, see further down over people. So if you do have obstructions in the way, like low-hanging lights or high-backed monitors, those sorts of things do need to be taken into account when sensors are placed. But nonetheless, we're continually amazed at the coverage range that our sensor currently achieves, even at low ceiling heights.
Awesome. another one that, Alex, I'll hand over to you, but I'm also happy to add to as well. Why sit and stand is needed for workplace environments. So when I reach out to some large companies in Asia, they don't require it for now.
That's an interesting one. I guess there's each to their own in terms of what requirements are. At the crux of it, human behavior is about understanding more about what people are doing in the space, still anonymously, so that you can make decisions better. On the well-being, I was mentioning sitting and standing is useful for not just sitting all day, not just standing all day, but being able to understand the transition. And then you can even report on different teams and how much their transition occurs throughout the day. You could almost gamify it. The more that people are transitioning between sitting and standing, the better it is for your metabolism and therefore healthier for people. And it's also used as another reason to understand how many sit-stand desks are actually needed in an organization. And we actually have had interest for customers in Asia as well for this. But sit-stand is only one of the pieces of functionality that we can deliver. Another example is understanding the friction in the workplace. I mentioned understanding if someone's on the phone. Perhaps someone's walking in the corridors on the phone, or someone's in the boardroom, one person on the phone. That's a clear indicator there's not enough private focus areas that's required in the space.
Yeah, also, and I'd like even adding to that of I think the sit stand functionality is pretty cool. But what we're seeing a lot of workplaces do is even change the types of workstations they're offering. And we're seeing not just, okay, one standard workstation. We've got these ergonomic sit stand stations coming in, which are quite expensive to deploy. And a lot of companies have gone, that is their minimum standard without actually dictating, is that what people in the space are wanting or not? And is obviously a link to your well certification that there is a minimum amount of your workstations that need to be sit stand. So it is a great way for companies to evaluate, do they need to do additional on top of that well certification requirement? And are people using it? And I'm seeing a lot more in like office fit outs where their companies are putting in more of that higher style collaboration desk that people can go to with their laptop because they want to stand, but they're actually not looking for that variable standing height, which has been quite interesting and providing those multiple different variations of workstation styles to work because we're finding employees and colleagues want that kind of variation to the type of workstations. And again, the gamification, a lot of companies that are really looking to improve their office vibe and culture and really lean into that wellness initiative of that gamification of which neighborhood has stood the most hours over the last month and actually intertwine that into their people and culture initiatives to actually have more camaraderie across different buildings and campuses. So it's what I'm really excited about. And I know for everyone, it doesn't always make sense as to the why, but when you start thinking about the different, like again, everyone wants people in the office to collaborate. And it is actually a really interesting way of looking how you can actually make some of this data accessible to some of the users of space to see what's happening.
So for the next webinar, Siobhan, you're going to talk about sit stand for 30 minutes because you're
I
clearly
could talk about it for hours, and I'm
very
standing
passionate
now
about it.
like on this webinar of like
Yeah,
my
there's a
passion.
couple of questions I might answer meanwhile, and I can sort of combine the two together. So one was, does the Area Pro sensor support air quality monitoring? And in terms of phone booths, is there a way to measure phone booths? I think I saw that question on there as well. So I'll combine that in terms of sensor fusion. We don't believe it makes sense to measure the air quality in the ceiling because that's not where people breathe the air. It actually makes more sense to measure at torso height or above where people are actually breathing the air. So while we support air quality sensors through our partners and ingesting into our platform, the one sensor doesn't give the accuracy that's required to measure the air quality up there. The heat's different. You have to sort of compromise for it. And then the other question around phone booths and lower ceiling heights. Whilst our sensor actually can support slightly lower ceiling heights, we do also have a presence sensor, and that presence sensor can go into phone booths, and it's more of a on-off occupancy-based sensor, and that can measure the utilization of the phone booths. There's another question in there around paths of travel. Can the data be collated and displayed in a heat map diagram to show most frequent paths? So we already have replays where we can show the movement through space, but think of each dot as being the same color. This year, we'll be delivering Dwell as an over-the-air update, as well as paths of travel. And yes, the answer was you'll be able to see a heat map diagram to show the most frequented paths. So if you imagine two teams and their interaction. You'd be able to see how they interact and where they travel. Another really great use case for paths of travel, I think, is understanding how busy a workplace is, for how long it takes people to go from their locker to their desk. And let's say at 9:30 a.m. in the morning, it's a really busy day. Are people traveling straight from their locker to the desk, or they're going from the locker and walking around the space? And if that's not a straightforward path and it takes longer, then that's an indicator of how busy the space is and an indicator of friction in the space.
Okay,
I can keep going with these questions. I think there's some really good questions being asked, so happy to go. In terms of power consumption and multi-sensor stitching using the primary and secondary hubs, are there any changes? Whoever asked that question is definitely aware of XY Sense, so I'll give them that. In terms of the power consumption, the Area Pro sensor, even despite the increased neural processing unit and its processing power, is roughly on par with the Area 1.1 sensor in terms of its power consumption, perhaps even slightly less with some sleeping. So it's able to do more with less power consumption. So you're still getting the 30 sensors, 30 Area Pro sensors per our gateway. And you can have 90 sensors connected to a set of 3 gateways for a floor. And that's a pretty ginormous floor. We don't have many floors with 90 sensors on them. Let's put it that way.
Awesome. There's a lot more questions coming through, but I think that's probably all we have time for today. We'll review all the other questions and do a summary as well post this call, sending the recording to anyone who couldn't make it live, and also answering all those questions that have come through. But would obviously encourage everyone to reach out to, if you know people at XY. If you don't, feel free to jump onto the website and you can contact us through that. On the webinar as well, there is actually a way to look at some materials, and you can download some of the materials we have for Area Pro, or also connect with Alex and myself. But highly encourage everyone to reach out, stay connected. We're so excited about this launch, and I think the excitement's just beginning now of actually speaking to people more and more about the different use cases for this tech. So really appreciate you joining us. I suppose Alex is probably going to go to bed, and appreciate you staying up late to deliver our global launch of Area Pro.
Yeah, no, thanks for having us, and thanks, Siobhan, and thanks to everyone in the audience for the great questions and your participation.
Awesome. Thanks all. See you at the next one.